Welcome everybody to the Liturgy at the Chalice. After a little break and some traveling, I'm back, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. Our topic of the day is God just a father, or is God a mother too? From most ancient times, the most ancient archaeological evidence that we have about God in the form of sculpture are little divine mother figures. Little figures of women with breasts signifying nurturance and a large belly signifying the ability to give birth. So the most ancient relics, the most ancient artifacts we have of human religion since ancient antiquity, it began with mother, not father. So we have to ask ourselves, the Abrahamic religions in particular, that of Jewish religion, Christian, and Islamic religion, we speak of a patriarchal deity in modern times. But did the Hebrew religion ever consult a female deity or a female aspect of deity? That's what we're going to explore today. And the title of this talk is Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. So in modern Christianity, we have this idea of the Holy Trinity. The Holy Trinity in modern Christianity is considered as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Son is considered specifically to be Jesus, and that all three of these are one God. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are equal and are essentially the same, just different aspects. And it's a mystery. We can never really understand it. That's what the modern church wants us to think. And of course it's a mystery, because how can three guys give birth to creation? It's not logical. Everything comes from a mother. Everything comes from a mother. It's not logical that the Holy Trinity should be all male. And the fact, as we'll see, is that it wasn't always all male. The true Holy Trinity would be the Divine Father, the Divine Mother, and the Son. The Son is not just Jesus, but all of humanity. The Son specifically is the one consciousness that vivifies us and expresses through each of us. So again, in modern Christianity, all three, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, are understood to be masculine, patriarchal concepts. All three aspects are mysteriously one. Although this theology seems to indicate polytheism, worshiping more than one God, modern Christians insist they are monotheistic, that they worship only one God. The Holy Spirit is the lost feminine aspect of divinity, at least in Christianity. The Holy Spirit in Aramaic is called Ruach HaKodesh, which is feminine, not masculine. The Ruach HaKodesh is the feminine aspect of God. The original Aramaic term, Ruach HaKodesh, was feminine. Then Ruach was changed to the masculine Greek terms Pneuma, which means spirit, or Pneumahagion, Holy Spirit in the Gospels. Finally, much later, St. Jerome wrote the Vulgate, Biblia Vulgata, which is the Bible in common tongue in 382 Common Era, which had been commissioned by Pope Damasus I to revise the Vetus Latina Gospels used by the Roman Catholic Church. In the Vulgate, Pneuma Hagion became the masculine Spiritus Sanctus. So there is a definite edit on Jesus' teaching. Anytime you see Jesus speak of the Holy Spirit in the Christian Testament, you should roll it back in your mind to the Aramaic concept, Ruach HaKodesh, and know that it is feminine. It is the Divine Mother in Christianity that has been lost. Over time, as the patriarchy took control and matriarchy momentarily subsided, the Divine Mother is arising now in this world as we speak. She's going to be taking her throne back. But as everything feminine in women were suppressed in the age from which Jesus came from, Ruach, feminine, then became Pneuma Hagion in Greek. And Pneuma Hagion is neuter. It's a neuter term. It's neither feminine nor masculine. But when St. Jerome wrote the Vulgate, he changed the neuter, Pneuma Hagion, into the man, the masculine, Spiritus Sanctus. So, this feminine aspect of God had an unwilling sex change. Lost Gospel of the Hebrews, we have some fragments from the Lost Gospel of the Hebrews, which comes from our church fathers, the Roman Catholic church fathers. The good thing about the church fathers proclaiming this or that as heresy is that although they burned or destroyed those Gospels, some of them, they often quoted those scriptures in their writings, so that they could say exactly what was so heretical and what needed to be blotted out and destroyed, blah, blah, blah. So again, we only have a few fragments from the Lost Gospel of the Hebrews, and we get this from the Church Fathers' writings. Particularly, we get a lot of them from Origen in his commentary on John. So, the Gospel of the Hebrews is lost. The text of the Gospel is lost, and only fragments of brief quotations by the early church fathers in apocryphal writings have survived to date. Fragment 3 is particularly interesting. Jesus is said as having said, "Even so did my mother, the Holy Spirit, take me by one of my hairs and carry me away onto the great mountain Tabor." So here, in the Gospel of the Hebrews, Jesus calls the Holy Spirit my mother. In other words, the feminine aspect of God, the Divine Mother, was something that Jesus did relate to. "Even so did my mother, the Holy Spirit, take me by one of my hairs and carry me away onto the great mountain Tabor." Recorded by Origen. The Ruach HaKodesh is the spirit of wisdom and divine guidance. In John chapter 14, verses 25 through 26, we see this: "I have said these things to you while I am still with you, but the Advocate, the Ruach HaKodesh, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you everything and remind you of all that I have said to you. So here, these are one of the few phrases, really, Jesus himself, or what is put into Jesus' mouth in the scriptures. He only mentions the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, a handful of times. And this is one of them. And it's very important to know that Jesus is here saying that while I'm with you, I'm going to teach you. But when I'm gone, you will go to the Ruach HaKodesh for guidance. And that great Mother Spirit will teach you everything. Will teach you more than what I've taught you. Each of us are holy temples of the Ruach HaKodesh. The Divine Mother lives within our hearts. Her name is also known as Sophia. And that great wisdom is what can guide our intuition to more expansive divine consciousness. Sophia, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Shekinah, this divine mother wisdom that is in your heart can guide you to union with her, with Godhead. Sinning against the Ruach HaKodesh. This is another phrase that Jesus speaks in the Christian Testament. We see it in several Gospels, but I'm going back to the earliest one. Mark is the oldest of the 4 canonical Gospels, and maybe the least tainted or the least redacted, even though it definitely has redactions. Meaning additions and possibly subtractions from the Master Jesus' teachings. So here in Mark chapter 3, verses 28 through 29, we see, "Truly I tell you," that's Amen, Amen. Amen, Amen, I tell you, people will be forgiven for their sins and whatever blasphemies they utter. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit can never have forgiveness, but is guilty of an eternal sin. Amen, amen, I tell you, people will be forgiven for their sins and whatever blasphemies they utter. But whoever blasphemes against the Ruach HaKodesh can never have forgiveness, but is guilty of an eternal sin. So this is a very heavy statement, which leads us to ask, what is a sin against the Holy Spirit? What is a sin against the Divine Mother? The Holy Spirit is goodness that permeates, sustains, and upholds all of creation. The Holy Spirit is the creative energy. It's the spiritual, creative power of God that exists in every molecule of space. And when that vibration slows down, it becomes matter. This goodness is the goodness of the universe. It's the goodness of God, and it's the goodness within every one of our souls, within each of our temples of our hearts. When you turn away from goodness, that is an eternal sin. And eternal had a different meaning. It didn't mean forever, it just meant a long time. One thing we have to understand that modern Christians may disagree with me about, but it is historical. A finite action cannot produce an infinite result. A finite action cannot produce an infinite result. No matter how bad of a mistake we have, Yes, we have to face the consequences of our negative actions. We must in order to grow in this lifetime or future lifetimes. But no finite sin or mistake can ever make you have an eternal punishment. There's no eternal hell. There just isn't. There's no eternal punishment. However, when you were a kid and you were told to go to your room and that you couldn't play Nintendo, or you couldn't play video games, or you couldn't go out and play with your friends, didn't that punishment feel eternal? It felt like a very long time. Whenever we sin or turn our backs on goodness itself, the Ruach HaKodesh, we're guilty of an eternal sin, a sin whose consequences last a long time. How long? Until we turn back to the divine light. Until we say, I want to seek you. I'm truly sorry for what I've done. I want to seek love. I want to express love. And in that moment, that eternal sin is gone. So always remember, if you get spiritually confused, a finite action from finite beings like us can never produce an infinite reaction or an infinite consequence. So here's a wrap-up of sinning against the Ruach HaKodesh. The idea of an eternal sin is not logical. Again, a finite action cannot produce an infinite result. The Greek was translated into English without a proper grasp on the Hebrew word olam. Eternity is an olam, or eon in Greek. Eternal is olamic, that is a great length of time, but it's not infinite. A sin against the Ruach HaKodesh is when you think or consider something holy as evil or non-sacred. Dr. Louis Kaiser teaches in his book, The Christian Teachings, the Pre-Christian Teachings of Yeshua, just as those who turn their back to the sun condemn themselves to seeing only their own dark shadows, those who observe with an evil eye will see only evil. But they always have the freedom to turn and face the light. Other Jewish wisdom tradition names for the Ruach HaKodesh. These are all synonymous. It's going back in time now. We're tracing our steps from the Christian Testament and Jesus' word for Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. We also see in Old Testament writings, the Hebrew Bible, and also in some of our non-canonical scriptures and records, we see the title Ruach HaEmet, which means the Spirit of Truth. Chokmah, which is divine wisdom. Chokmah is also one of the Sephirot on the Kabbalistic tree. Shekinah, divine eminence, also made mostly famous through Kabbalah and those who practice Kabbalah. Abba. Abba is the name that Jesus, Mar Yeshua, used to refer to God. And Abba means father, mother. Ab is father. Ba is a feminine addition to the word. So Abba means both father and mother at the same time. Not just father. Abba is not pater. The Greek word used in the Christian Testaments, whenever they don't directly use the word Abba, because they do actually list Jesus as using the word Abba in the Christian Testament. But most of the time, father is pater. And when they switch it to pater, you lose the whole idea of how Jesus perceived God. Jesus perceived God as a very personal father, mother, divine parent. Abba was one with two aspects. The Abba was both father and mother. The father aspect is transcendental and beyond what he emanated into being. That is the universe, you, me, the trees, all the animals, all that lives. The mother aspect is immanent, that is within us. If we seek her within, she is a teacher, a guide, a compassionate helper, a mirror for divine remembrance, divine recollection, divine regeneration or rebirth. The Master Jesus refers to the Holy Spirit as Chokmah in the Gospel of Luke. Chapter 7, verses 34 through 35. For John the Baptist has come, eating no bread and drinking no wine, and you say he has a demon. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Nevertheless, Chokmah, wisdom, is vindicated by all her children. Here Jesus refers to the Divine Mother, Chokmah. Wisdom is personified as the Divine Feminine. Chokmah, wisdom, is vindicated by all her children. So no matter what people say, oh, you're crazy, why do you go to church? God doesn't exist, Jesus doesn't exist, he was just a myth. Actually, to me, I do believe Jesus lived, but also to me it doesn't matter if he did live or whether he was just a myth. It's the wisdom, it's what you can do that changes the world and changes humanity that matters. All these great beings, all these great saints, they don't need to hang out with other saints. They came to earth to help us to purify ourselves, to help us to expand our vision, to help us to grow our consciousness into unity with the Supreme Consciousness. So even if people judge us for being spiritual in a largely unspiritual world, nevertheless, Chokmah is vindicated by all of her children. Ruach HaKodesh developed throughout Jewish history. And we see the term Ruach, which means spirit or spirit of God in Genesis. The Spirit of God, Ruach, moved over the deep. In the pre-exilic period, 12th through 6th centuries BC, we find the Hebrews worshipping El Elyon and Asherah. Asherah is a goddess. The early Jewish scriptures report the Hebrews worshipping El Elyon, father, masculine god, and Asherah, female, divine mother. Asherah was the divine mother, the creator of the world. After the Babylonian exile, patriarchal Jewish sages championed monotheism, and Asherah disappeared. But not really. Was Judaism monotheistic? Obviously, from what we are learning, Judaism, Mar Yeshua's religion, was not monotheistic, but essentially polytheistic. Evidence of this is in Genesis, and it's still there. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth. That's what we see. However, the word God is Elohim. Elohim means gods with an S. So if you wanted to translate the Hebrew to English correctly, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 should say, in the beginning, when gods, plural, created the heavens and the earth, so on and so forth. But there is intentional redaction to make the plural Hebrew word Elohim the singular English word God. It was intentional, an intentional change. So again, these translations are not so honest. In the beginning, when Elohim created the heavens and the earth, El is God, masculine God. Elohim is God's plural. So yes, God's is plural in Genesis. When Yahweh met Elohim. So after the purposeful forgetfulness of the divine feminine, the Divine Mother aspect of God was preserved in Kabbalah, a form of Jewish mysticism, and in Haggadah, oral tradition, as matronit, Yahweh's wife. It's believed that on Friday, whenever you celebrate the Shabbat Seder, the sacrament of Shabbat, is actually a time when husband and wife come together for sexual pleasure, because sex isn't dirty. Kabbalah honors the human body and the human experience. It's not aesthetic. Jesus wasn't aesthetic. Most likely, Jesus had a wife. People may argue that the wife may have been Mary Magdalene, and then they'll have this huge controversy based off of whatever reasons. To me, it doesn't really matter if his wife was Mary Magdalene, but we should understand that it's unheard of for a Jewish rabbi or a Jewish Rav, like Mar Yeshua was, to not be married. He most likely was married at some point in his life. Otherwise, he would have been way out on the fringe of society. It was Christianity that wanted to make Jesus into an aesthetic. However, anyhow, during the sacrament of Shabbat, which we also celebrate every Friday online, that's the night whenever husband and wife come together in sacred union, imitating the sacred union of Yahweh and his wife, matronit. In Orthodox Judaism, the divine feminine was permanently excommunicated by the 6th to 5th century before Christ. And why do you think this was done? Why do you think the Divine Mother was outlawed? In the beginning of Christianity, all you have to read is Paul's epistles, his letters, to see how important women were in the early churches. Women were deacons. Women were bishops. We have historical archaeological evidence of female bodies being uninterred in full bishop regalia. Paul directly states in the authentic letters of Paul that women were very important, and he thanked them. It wasn't until a much later letter with Timothy, the letter to Timothy, the letter of Timothy, that it began saying that Paul taught the women to not speak, and that the men should be in control, and that they should just have a veil over their head all the time. Women should be invisible. But all scholars agree, or at least the vast majority of scholars agree, based off of the big differences in the Greek writing in the authentic letters of Paul, as opposed to inauthentic letters like Timothy, that they were forged. In other words, they weren't written by the hand of Paul. They may be written by the school of Paul, later disciples or students to the school of Paul, but Paul himself did not write Timothy, which is what began to suppress women in Christianity. Of course, the divine feminine was already suppressed when the Divine Mother was excommunicated in 6th to 5th century BC. Men wanted power over women. It's evident from historical archaeological evidence that the Divine Mother and most religions, pre-Abrahamic religions, either were purely matriarchal or heavily influenced by the divine feminine. Nobody said that God was just a man until 6th, 5th century BC and onward. And Jesus, being a true sage and a true illumined being, tried to bring back the divine feminine. He said, Ruach HaKodesh, the feminine Holy Spirit, divine mother. He said, Chokmah, even though it's buried in the English translations, and Chokmah is the divine mother in early Jewish thought, in the Jewish wisdom schools. So this was done to give power to men, and to take away power from women. And it's time that women take back their authority and become the spiritual leaders they are. Most people that I know that are truly on this path, and almost all that I know that are far along the path, are women. We need to empower women, honor women, honor the Divine Mother aspect in every soul, whether we have a male gender or a female gender. The Divine Mother is within us. We need to honor that, or humanity will never grow. The Malkuth will never come if there's not an aspect of God to give birth to the Malkuth. So, Ruach, Spirit of God, became understood and personified as Chokmah, divine wisdom, feminine, in both Psalms and the wisdom traditions in general. Chokmah was wisdom and guidance itself. Chokmah, or Ruach, was what enabled the prophets to prophesy, including Mar Yeshua. Mar Yeshua prophesied what the Ruach HaKodesh taught him in his heart. This became the Christian Pauline speaking in tongues. These were the concepts that informed Yeshua's Ruach HaKodesh. It is what remains the Divine Mother in Orthodox Judaism and Orthodox Christianity. And this church does not honor the Holy Spirit as a man. We honor the Ruach HaKodesh, the Divine Mother Spirit, the mother part of God. Without the Mother and the Father, there would be no humanity. There would be no Son. In Orthodox Christianity, the Holy Trinity is the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Masculine Holy Spirit. In the Church of St. Philip, we do not have this Trinity. Nowhere in the Gospels does Jesus speak of this Trinity where all three are one. However, if you wanted to consider a Trinity to draw parallels in history, that Trinity would be the Abba, the Ruach HaKodesh, and the Baranash, Son of Mankind, corporate Messiah, that emanates from the Abba and the Ruach HaKodesh.